Good evening. It's time to add to my chronicles of the ongoing construction work on High Speed 2 with a little visit to Washwood Heath. The good people at High Speed 2 sent me an invitation to see what was going on up there, so off I went. So what exactly is going on at Washwood Heath? Well, two major things. Firstly, there's a tunnel. There are lots of tunnels on High Speed 2, but this one is the end of the Bromford Tunnel on the approach to Curzon Street. You may recall that in my last video, where I visited a construction site for High Speed 2, I showed you the viaducts leading into the new Curzon Street station. I mean, it doesn't matter if you don't recall it, because here they are again. Well, now the line has to get from under the ground to above it. Trains really don't like climbing, so that's kind of an engineering challenge. You know who else doesn't like climbing? Me. However, the only way into the tunnel approach worksite was via a spiral staircase, and going down it kind of reminded me of that bit in the Lavender Hill Mob. If you've seen it, you know the one I mean. If you haven't, then go and see it, because it's a great film. Digging the tunnel here is pretty challenging because the ground is just awful. In theory, it's clay, which is really easy to dig through. But in practice, this is a former industrial site dating back decades. Digging here has been an absolute nightmare because they keep running into walls and floors from old buildings. As if that's not enough, the ground was highly polluted. Well, some of it still is, but as part of the process of redeveloping, BBV, the contractors, have to clean things up as best they can. The concrete is being ground down and used for various purposes on site, embankments and roads and such. What you've got here is a 22-metre deep concrete box, not dissimilar, as you may recall, to the one at Old Oak Common. At the moment it's just the basic structure, no tracks or even trackbed. At the far end they're still digging. The soil poses other challenges. Down here it's what's known as mudstone, which is a simple way of saying compressed clay. And the thing about compressed clay is that when you remove the top layers, the layers down below start to decompress. So the concrete box has had to be designed to not only withstand the weight of the walls, but to compensate for the floor trying to rise up. Oh, and also the ground is waterlogged, so enormous amounts of water need to be pumped out. Now, as for what's happening over here, that's where the tunnel boring machines are going to come through. The tunnel begins at Water Orton in North Warwickshire. The bores are named Elizabeth and Mary Ann. I don't know if they're named after anyone in particular, but I wouldn't want to be associated with boring myself. Now, if I've got this correct, the Mary Ann bore will be coming through this year and Elizabeth next year, and it wouldn't be the first time a railway tunnel named Elizabeth has been a year behind. When the tunnel boring machines come through, the idea is that they'll be lifted up through the roof there and taken away by road. The concept of climbing that spiral staircase again filled me with dread, and I was tempted to just wait down here until they finished the dig. But apparently that wasn't practical, and in any case I have to show you the other major thing. The other major thing that is happening here is the depot. Well, this is the site of the depot. At present it's not very photogenic, but over the next few years it's going to become the nerve centre of HS2. The depot will be built here, where trains can be stored and maintained, and so too will the Network Integrated Control Centre. That's going to control the whole line. It's kind of mad to me that technology has advanced so much that you can do that. Like, when my great-granddad was a signalman, you had signal boxes all over the place, and everything had to be done by hand and by eye. I just think it's interesting. The hope is that this will act as a boon for the local area in two ways. Firstly, obviously, the site itself is going to provide something like 550 jobs. But then there's the other development. So yes, there's a third major thing happening here. So the way it works is this. The site covers 65 hectares, and I'll be honest, I never really knew what a hectare actually is. However, the press people explained that 65 hectares is equivalent to about 100 football pitches, which is much easier to understand, unless you are American. Now, there's a procedure with railways that dates all the way back to the Victorians, which is this. Railways always acquire more land than they need while being built. That's because, in the planning stages, you don't know if things are going to go to, well, plan. It's better to have a bit of wiggle room. But the condition is usually that you have to give the land you don't use back, and that's what's happening here. The plans as they stand leave 24 hectares of brownfield surplus. And the idea is that the council will get that back and build a new commercial development, which it is hoped will provide another 1,000 jobs. I don't know what 24 hectares is in football fields. So while High Speed 2 isn't going north, it is to provide an economic boost to Birmingham. Personally, I'm hoping that the boost will encourage whichever government is in charge when the line is completed to reinstate the northern extension. But then I would say that. I'm a train nerd. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If so, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I would like, as always, to thank my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon and here on YouTube for your support. You are the Mary Ann to my Elizabeth. I would also like to thank the good people at High Speed 2 and Balfour BT Vinci for inviting me down and answering my annoying questions. And I will see you all again very soon. Cheerio.